Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Drift Cutter Downlocking to get another Stone Cold Hockey video to do with the 83-84 season. We are doing the playoffs now. Look at the playoff format. It's 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, of course, in each of the divisions. The North Division, Minnesota takes on Detroit, whereas St. Louis will play Chicago, Minnesota, right, Fox City, St. Louis. Edmonton, our team will play Winterpeg, while Calgary takes on Vancouver. In the Adams Division, Buffalo takes on Montreal. Boston takes on Quebec. In the Adams and the Pacific. No, the Patrick, it's the Cupcakes. I mean, the Islanders against the Flyers. Okay. And Washington takes on Rangers. This is how we got here. Minnesota with 91 points won the division. St. Louis 84. Chicago 71. Detroit 63. Toronto missed out by 1 point. They were so close. They had 29 wins, but the ties helped Detroit out. In our division, we had a 50, 25, and 5 mark. Not bad, 105, with 85 points to Calgary. Vancouver nipping Winnipeg for third, and them facing Calgary instead of us. Winnipeg had 34 wins. Vancouver had 13 ties, the most in the NHL. Buffalo won the Adams Division 110, Boston 102, Quebec 97, Montreal 85, and Islanders 110, Washington 106, Rangers 99, Flyers 87. The goal scoring, Wayne Gretzky was 74. Pierre LaRouche, Michel Goulet, Mike Gardner, Rick Five, and Mike Bossy for 50 goals. Rick Middleton and Brian Sutter almost got to 50 goals. Tim Kerr nearly had 50 goals. Points wise, Gretzky 175, Coffey 126. And Goulet 124. Chartier, Harchuk, Bossy, Stassi, Middleton, Peterson, Sutter, LaRoche, Federico, Pavlich with 100 points. The penalty minutes leader was 345 from Willie Platt. Chris Nyland 316, Tiger 305. Laurie Boschman had 222 penalty minutes even though he had a 30 goal season. Stan Smith had 163. Mark Messier did that. Kevin McClellan 190. But anyway, yeah, the goals against leader Tom Barrasso 2.55, Al Jansen 258, Pete Peters 281. Problem is that the top 7 goals against were in their same division, whereas Andy Moog was a 3.2. Yeah. Fair's 14 for 344. The top 2 in the Campbell Conference came from the same league. 27 from Moog, 23 from Fuhr. Well, Moog with 27. The only player ahead of him in wins was Pete Pierce with 28, but they only played 43. Yeah. Yeah, standings 50, 25, and 5. 384 goals scored, the most in the NHL. Only 2 other teams hit 350, and that was the Rangers and the Nordiques, who are third in their divisions. We gave up 278, the least in our um, conference, and only 4 teams, Buffalo, Boston, Islanders, and Washington, gave up fewer. Quebec gave up 279. We were 28, 10, and 2 at home, the most home wins in the league. 22, 15, and 3, the most road wins in the league, nipping Minnesota by 2 in that mark. Second best home record was 22 wins by St. Louis. We tied Buffalo for third best home record with 28 wins. Islanders were 29, Rangers at 31. They were dismal on the road. Yeah, 22 road wins, tied with Boston and Islanders for third behind Buffalo. It's 23 and Washington 23. See the bracket, the teams, highlights, and all that. Most memorable game was Toronto, New Jersey from October 16th, the 5th game of the season, which the Leafs had a 6-3 lead, and then the Devils won in overtime, finally winning them. St. Louis, Winnipeg from December 23rd, when it was a 13-goal fest. 6 lead change to St. Louis, Montreal. Montreal was up 5-2 and fucked it up against St. Louis. And Hartford, Calgary won. Hartford was down 5-1 to Calgary. We're in the playoffs now. So we are going to be simulating all this stuff before our games. Detroit wins in overtime in Minnesota as Eddie Mio beats Don Beaupre, the Pride of Waterloo. Overtime winner by Ron Duguay, former Ranger. From speaking of former Rangers, well, Mio was a former Ranger. From Reed Larson and Dwight Foster, catch it. Yeah, Dwight Foster, former Kitchener Ranger. St. Louis, Chicago. St. Louis with a shutout. Rick Hines with the shutout. As Brian Sutter, Doug Gilmour, Joe Mullen, and then Ducky Gilmour again scored for the Blues. People forget Doug Gilmour was a Blue. Vancouver went into Calgary, won 5-1. Caprice Pants beats Lemelin. Hindmarch for Calgary. Vancouver goes by Sundstrom, Smeel, Petit. Washington Rangers. Rangers going to Washington win 6-2. Glenn Hanlon takes down Pat Regan. Only 2 Washington goals for Dave Christian, Ron Langway. The Pirate Mike Blasdell. Mark Pavlich, Ryan Greshner, Andre Hedberg, Pierre LaRouche, and Mike Rogers, Pierre LaRouche. Islanders 4-3 against the Flyers. Kelly Rudy with the win over Bob Froese. Islanders were up 4-1. Prop and Poulin scored. Quebec went into Boston, win 4-2. It's Bouchard. Donnie Bouchard beats Mike Moffat. Silk and Casper for Boston. Quebec goes by McKechnie, Stashny, Cote, and Goulet. And Montreal wins in overtime in Buffalo. Rick Wamsley beats Bob Sauve. Buffalo goes by Rhea Kluche and Davey Anderchuk. Montreal goes by Steve Shutt, Pierre Mondu, and then Perry Turnbull. The immortal Perry Turnbull in overtime. So now we play Winnipeg in game 1 of the best of 5. We send Grand Fuhrer to the crease. Doug Soltart for Winnipeg. They have Brian Hayward, who also is future habitant. Mike Pfizer, Mark Bernhardt, and Mark Stankowski. We have Andy Moog as our backup. Our main guys, the great Wayne Gretzky, Glenn Anderson, Yuri Curry, the original Finnish superstar, not disrespect to Timu, Paul Coffey, Kitchener, Moose Messier, Pat Hughes, Dave Hunter, Willie Lindstrom, Ken the Rat Linsman, Dr. Randy Gregg, Euro Pusar, Charlie Huddy, Kevin McLelland, Don Jackson, Dave Lumley, Dave Semenko, the Protector, Lee Vogelin Jr., Kevin Lowe, Pat Conacher, Rick Chartroff, Kitchener. Look it up, people. Ken Berry, Raimo Suminen, and Jim Playfair, who embarrassed himself as an AHL coach in that 2010 YouTube video. Winnipeg has Paul McLean, the Walrus, Dale Hawerchuk, the savior of Winnipeg, in a sense, because that #1 pick in 1981 worked out for Winnipeg. Hawerchuk, great and all that. Lucien Debois, Morris Lukowitz, whose brother Ed was a 2-time Canadian curling champion. Laurie Boschman, who was supposed to be a born-again Christian. Brian Mullen, former future Ranger. Scott O'Neill, Thomas Dean, number 25 in your retired numbers programs. Doug Smale, who once scored 4 seconds in a period. Dave Babbage, the number 2 pick in the 1980 draft after they passed on Dennis Savard like the Habitants. Mo Mantha, Tim Young, Andrew McBain. Wade Campbell, Robert Packard, Brent Longhold, Jordy Douglas, Tim Waters, Ron Wilson. I don't know if it's the coach Ron Wilson or the other one. Jim Kite, Dunspring, Randy Carlisle, who was low end, but then by the end of it actually won the Norris. All that. And Yurki Sepa. Here we go. 2 minutes into the game. We whack him. Whack him again. 5 minutes later. Let's go! Well, they're on the board. 3 minutes later. Dave the Crocodile Hunter. Crikey, she's a beauty, eh? His first from Gretzky. The Walrus. I am the Walrus from Young and Dubois. Makes it 2-1. Headed to period number 2. And Winnipeg. Oh, we had a chance. We was it all that time. The other side. The Crocodile Hunter does it again. Let Gretzky score. He doesn't have to score. He can score assists. They won from Matthew. You can only stop 4-1. 4 minutes later, Gresham. Cattle check. And 4-1. They're gonna yank him. It will be Stankowski who will come in. Winnipeg is like, oh well, we'll just save room for game 2. Scores from Greg in momentum. Edmonton takes a penalty. It's Huddy. Catskills. Babbage scores from Steen and Lungholm. Makes it 5-2, making Winnipeg lucky they took Babbage. 2 minutes later. Catskills. 5 minutes later. I know I shouldn't do comments, but what a goal, Don Jackson. Ooh, makes me feel good. Never meant to make it 7-2, but it just makes Winnipeg so blue. I saw the goal, Don Jackson. Ooh, and it feels good. From Low and Coffee. 2 minutes later. That's it. Decided to move to Winnipeg Smale, so the rest of the game we can score on the power play. It doesn't matter. We won 7-2 anyways, so nice job by Fear doing his job. Soltart just couldn't do his job. We scored 3 goals on Stankowski. 2 goals from Hunter, 1 by Hughes, 1 by Gretzky, 1 by Messi, 1 by Pusar, and even Don Jackson. McLean and Babbitt for Winnipeg. So actually, 5 of the 8 game 1s have been won by the road team. Chicago is in trouble against St. Louis 7-3. Blues, Leo beats Bannerman. Chicago did tie it at 3. Brown, Sear, and Steve Larmer, but St. Louis goes by Rick Wilson, Wickenheiser, Mullen, Sutter, and Guy Chouinard. So the Blues are pretty much putting Chicago to the sword. Calgary wins 4-3. They're forced at least at game 4. Lemelin beats Caprice. Calgary's up 4-1. Neely and Rhoda scored to try to cut it. Washington wins in overtime. Rangers scored first. Osborne from Bladell and Hedberg. Third period, Scott Stevens, Kitchener from Bobby Covington in overtime on the power play after Maloney got in trouble for slashing. Craig, my bloody Valentine from Curry and Glenn Curry and Larry Murphy made it 2-1, and that series will go to at least a 4th. Others win Anwar Prokashyan. They're up 4-2, but Dave Poulin and Bill Barber, Kitchener, scored. And then in overtime, Tonelli from Dwayne Sutter in person made it 5-4. Boston crushes Quebec to tie the series 8-1. Bouchard gets his ass whipped. Peter Stachny for Quebec. Marquardt, O'Connell, Krushansky, Peterson, Middle. Montreal is now 2 up on Buffalo. Wow, they're doing it just like in real life. Real life imitating art, imitating real life. 4-1. Penny from Heaven being Bob Sauve. McKenna scored for Buffalo, but then Montreal 4 straight. Smith, Robinson, Kitchener, Bobby Smith, and then Wickenheiser. Wickenheiser playing for both teams. He should be playing for one team, and that's St. Louis. Yeah, wait, how many games did Montreal win? No, sorry, summary. They won 38 games, so they won more in the simulation. So now they're up 2-0. Minnesota gets Detroit back, winning in overtime. Detroit was up 4-2. It looked like they were going to be up 2-love, and then Hartsburg and Napier scored. And then late in double overtime, Napier has scored from Marouk and Broughton. I think Montreal got Napier for Bobby Smith. No, sorry, Bobby Smith was traded to Montreal for Mark Napier, I think. So, yeah, so we have 3 series at 2-0. Can Edmonton make it 2-0? Grant Fuhr back in the net. Brian Hayward trying to do his job. The future backup goalie to Patrick Roy, winning the Jennings Trophy for goals against. 5 minutes into the game. Quebec scores. Boschman from the Waters and Steam makes it 1-0. Another shot. Oh, fuck. 3 minutes. says Winnipeg from Anderson Kirk. 6 minutes later, Edmonton takes a penalty. It's Lindstrom. Shot skewers. The Walrus. I am the Walrus. McLean from Steen and Arneal makes it 2-1. 2 minutes later. Skewers. The big one. Gretzky, goal number 2. Greg, 2 assists. 3 minutes later. Winnipeg skewers. Smale Mail scores from Howard Chuck and Lundholm makes it 3-2. Something must have changed in that dressing room. Forcer? Fuck. 2 minutes later. Shot skewers. Hard, hurry hard, sweep. He swept that puck into the net like his big brother Ed from Smale, 4-2. Oh boy. 4 minutes later, a fight. John Jackson needs to fight, and he fights Tim Waters. No big deal. Wee Willie Lindstrom scores his first from Lumley and Hunter, makes it 4-3. And the Oilers were keeping fear in the net. We must. We can't. 4 minutes later. And it's Campbell. Nowhere. Brian Hayward. You might as well keep him. One. Messier, no. We might be. Damn it, we might go to overtime. No, and we somehow come back from 4-2 down to beat the Jets. We're now 1 win away from round number 2. 5-4. What a comeback from 4-2 down. Boschman, McLean, Smale, Lukowitz. We almost put fear on the net for Moog, but we said, nah, we're only down by 1. Hayward can't believe it. Who could stop the Oilers? Anyway, Calgary, Vancouver game 4 sees Calgary win 4-2 as Lemelin beats Caprice. Vancouver goes by LeMay and PT. Calgary goes by McDonald, Eves, Nielsen, and Eves. So we might be playing Calgary in the Battle of Alberta. Washington wins in overtime thanks to a Craig Longland goal from Alan Haworth to make it 5-4. So they're up 2-1. Boston wins in overtime against Quebec to take things back. Quebec was up 3-0. Goulet, McKechnie. It was big, but then Boston bided their time. McTavish, Pedersen, Middleton. And in overtime, Middleton from O'Connell and Crowder. Detroit wins 7-4. They're now up 3-2-1. Stafford beats Malash. Minnesota could be upset tonight. Could be. St. Louis, do they sweep Chicago? They do. 5-3. So St. Louis, the 2 seed. Hines beats Bannerman. The Blues did their job. Murray, Wilson, and Savard for Chicago. But Chouinard, Brian Sutter, Wilson, Rick Wilson, that is, Federico Gilmore. Do. And now we know who we're playing. Is it Minnesota or is it Detroit? And here we go. So Detroit could be going to St. Louis. Well, St. Louis would have home ice in the best of 7 division final. Islanders sweep the Flyers 5-3. Rudy beats Frozen. Rudy. Philly goes by Sinisalo, Bill Barber, Kitchener, and Rich Sutter. Or is it Ron Sutter? Doesn't matter. I don't know. But anyway, the Islanders goes by Bob Bourne, Greg Gilbert, Stephen Pearson, and then Denny Potvin. The Islanders sweep. They will host Washington or the Rangers no matter what. And Montreal wins 4-2. So Buffalo, the 1 seed, falls as Barraza loses to Richard Savigny. Buffalo goes by Hamel and Hamel. Montreal goes by Turnbull, Smith, and Robinson. Kitchener. So Montreal wins. They will be going to either Boston or Quebec for the next round, guaranteed. So now let's see if we can sweep Winnipeg aside. And we decide to use. They want Hayward in the net, but we're going to go with Andy Moog to finish it off. Let's just finish this off, people. 1 minute into the game. They can't score. Remember, we're blue dice because we're a little good. Who does? We do. We score. Gretzky from Coffee and Hunter makes it 1-0. You gotta stop playing Gretzky when you can. 2 minutes later. Explain Anderson. Winnipeg? No. And Mo Mantha tried to take a shot, but no. We deliver hits. Winnipeg retaliated. Campbell takes the stupidity penalty. And we score! Pop of the goal. Moose Messier from Gretzky and Coffee makes it 2-0. To end the period. What a stop by Andy Moog. We're up 2-0 after 20. 1 minute later. And further. And a fight. Wade Campbell decides to fight Ken the Rat Linsman. But Linsman is Linsman. Although it does hurt us in a bit. But we get it. We score. Messier from Coffee and Low makes it 3-0. Looks good. 5 minutes later. We score. There's a great one from Huddy and Hughes finally getting assists. All that. 4-0. 4-0. Yikes. Much later. Basically done for. Ed Stanikowski is going to come into the net because they're waving the white flag. They're not. Double off. 3 minutes later. Score! Moose Messier, throw the hats. Oh, yeah, we're in an opposing rink. His fourth from Lumley. He had only 1 goal in 2 games, but he scored 3 this time. Much later. Killing the clock. But Clellan takes the penalty. Killing the clock. And we score. The only coffee I drink are ice caps. Kitchener from Gretzky and Puzar makes it 6-3. And Winnipeg takes the penalty. Boschman will have a power play. Is that a hat trick for Gretzky? I don't think it is. It is a hat trick. Gretzky throws a hat trick in goal with 1 second left from Curry and Hughes. 7-3. We crush Winnipeg in the flying powder. Well, we scored what? How many goals did we score? I think we scored like 18, didn't we? We went 7-3, so we were up 4-0 before you know it. We scored another 3 goals on Stanikowski. His goals against must be atrocious. Yeah, but 2-0, 2-1, 3-2. So Winnipeg did score a pair of goals in the third period, but it was not enough. We scored 3 power play goals, and Gretzky and Messier both with a hat trick and a Paul Coffey goal messed up. So our big boys were there. 7-7-5. So we had 19 goals in 3 games. Holy shit. Too bad that we don't have our stats and all the. Like they haven't. Yeah, there's our playoff stats. Winnipeg is out. Brian Hayward 0-2 with a 5-4-9 goals against. Stanikowski a 9 goals against, and Soltart a 6 goals against. Thomas Dean scored 5 points, all assists. We only gave up 9 goals. Yeah, we only scored 9 goals. We scored 9 times on Hayward, the same amount of goals as they scored on us. Buffalo got shocked. Sauve 0-2 Brasso. So there's a shock. In the meantime, Detroit, do they take care of Minnesota? The answer is no, we got a game 5 in Minnesota. Bo Prairie does this job against Stefan. So, well, if Minnesota wins, they host the Norris final against St. Louis. If Detroit wins, they go to St. Louis. Vancouver wins 5-2 to take up game 5 in Calgary. It's Caprice beats Lemelin. Reinhardt, Kitchener, and McCowan for Calgary. Vancouver goes by Lance, Neely, Sundstrom, and two by Tony Conti. Washington Rangers. We're not done. Rangers force a game 5 in Washington. Weeks big, and they were up 5-0. Sundstrom, Rutsta, Leinen, Hedberg, Rogers, Dave Christian, and Craig Conklin for Washington. And Quebec wins in overtime. So every game 4 ended with a game 5. Quebec in overtime. Dan Bouchard beats Dow Keens. Boston was up 3-1, but Quebec made another weird comeback. Goulet and Andre Savard. And then in overtime at 16:04, Peter slashing from Tony McCagney. We go to game 5 in Boston. And we will start in Minnesota. And it was Minnesota winning. Detroit was up 2-0, but they couldn't do this job. Beaupre beat Stafford and poor Detroit. Minnesota will now host St. Louis in the next final. Rangers and overtime heroics for the New York Rangers win in overtime to beat Washington. Now they'll face the Islanders in the division finals. Al Jensen can't believe it. Within a minute, Blaine Stoughton, the guy picked up from Hartford from Beck and Greshner, is your hero. And Washington, everything they had is gone. Quebec and Boston, hockey in Canada. And Boston easily wins. Keens beats Malarchuk 7-3. Poor Quebec. So Boston will host Montreal in the division finals. And we do know it is Vancouver that will face us in the division finals, not Calgary. Calgary get tied late. Eves from Baxter and McCallum. But somehow, some way at 5:45, Sundstrom has fourth from Neely and Lance. So it's the Canucks we get in the division finals, not Calgary. Unreal. Two of the top 3 teams by points, Buffalo and Washington, are out. We're the second highest point total under those Islanders. Vancouver is the lowest point total in the NHL, still in at number 13. And we faced those guys. So only the Adams Division's number 1 seed fell. Minnesota, Edmonton, and the Islanders all made it. Well, we made it in 3. Islanders made it in 3. Minnesota had to make it in 5, and Detroit almost screwed them over. So the North is the only matchup without an upset. Minnesota and St. Louis 1-2. It's 1-3 with us. Edmonton, Vancouver. 1-3 Islanders, Rangers, and 2-4 Boston, Montreal. So as long as we win, well, if we win over Vancouver, we get home ice for the conference finals, and the Islanders will do the same thing too. After the Islanders comes Boston. So yeah. So we'll see. We'll see about that. So yeah. So let's just check the point totals right now. Gretzky scored the most goals with 6, and he only did it in 3 games. Like Agrodnik and Cicerelli had 5 games to score goals. Points wise, Brian Bellows, Kitchener with 11 points, Gretzky with 10, Middleton with 9. But Middleton needed 5 games, Bellows needed 5 games. Gretzky did it in 3 games, 6 goals, 4 assists. Goals against, technically, Steve Penny. Wow, look at that. Penny, Wamsley, and Sevigny. All 3 Montreal goalies played well. Rick Hines 2-0. Like for us, Fears 12 had 3, Moog 3. Doug Stoltart just sucked. Bob Sauve 0-2 had a better goals against than Fuhr and Moog. He was 2.86. Fuhr had a 3, and so did Moog. But it just proves the show something will happen. But yeah, we'll have more highlights next time. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do